5 feet tall, fair complexion, curves that could make the boys say hello, brunette, and an attitude that any religious man would despise. Sam is the kind of girl that any mother would warn their boys not to bring during family dinner. She was born without a mother or a father and grew up in the streets. She's neither a beggar or a homeless person, but definitely can't afford to buy a decent meal. She's used to making herself available to men in exchange for money. Sam was able to provide a place to sleep and food to eat by sharing her body for pleasure. Standing by the side of the road and waiting for wealthy old men to pick her up had helped Sam survive. She was strolling down the street when she saw and came across a poster that says, "Wanted Stripper." The location of the club was not far and it was just a few blocks away. Sam dashed to the club as quickly as she could. She rushed into the club and searched for the manager. The manager stepped out from his office and greeted Sam with a smile. He explained the club rules and asked about the girl's age. It seemed simple enough. All she has to do is dance on stage, no contact allowed, and can earn more money if Sam would sleep with the customer. Following that day, Sam returned to her rundown flat and prepared for her first shift. To finish it off, she chose a pair of net leggings, a black tank top with a low neckline to reveal a little cleavage, and a pair of very glossy high heels. Sam walked into the club, confidently strutting her heels and flaunting her body. The loud music gave her the rush she needed. Sam sat at the backstage area. The curtains began to open. Her stage name was announced, and she welcomed everybody with a seductive smile. There were a number of men, some of whom were old, some of them were young, and some didn't even appear to be of legal age to be at the club. When Sam began to move her body, majority of the men near the stage began throwing money as she gracefully slides down the pole. The show ended with 2 filled bucket bags and 2 guys to go for Sam. They took her to a very nice hotel where they spent the night. The next day was the same as the day before. When Sam finished her dance, a lovely man approached her and said hello. The man was attractive and appeared to be well-mannered. He gave off the impression that he was a nice guy and didn't belong in the club. The man asked Sam for a drink outside, and she happily agreed. He looked very nice. He drives a fancy car, wears nice clothes, and smelled really good. If there's one thing that is a major turn-on for Sam, it's a man that smells expensive. The man was taller than Sam, and he wasn't like the other individuals she had given her services to. He didn't even take her out for a drink to get drunk. Instead, he took Sam to a coffee shop in the middle of the night, sipping a cup of coffee and dressed as a stripper. Sam finds it unbelievable. The man introduced himself as Adam, and that he enjoys hiking, reading, and he's religious as well. They both sat down and discussed a variety of topics, but Sam felt uncomfortable having the man around. He's been talking incessantly about how a girl should dress, how should a girl carry itself, and how they should change for the better. Sam is not enjoying anymore and politely bid Adam goodbye, but she was grabbed by the wrist and Adam prevented her from standing up. His grip was strong. It inflicted pain and caused bruises. Sam had no choice but to sit down. Despite the scene, the man casually stated that Sam must change in order for God to accept her in paradise, and that he will be assisting her in doing so. The man hadn't let go of Sam's arm, and his grip already left a mark. He instructed Sam to finish her drink so they could leave. Sam was about to refuse finishing her drink, but she was left with no choice. Bottoms up to the last drop she goes. After a few seconds, Sam felt dizzy and could not even manage to stand up straight. With a throbbing head and a blinding light, Sam woke up in a small room with a single bed, a nightstand, 1 bathroom, a door, and no windows. Fright and terror took over and she panicked instantly. She tried unlocking the door, but it was locked from the outside. Crying for help was found useless, nor banging the walls did any help for Sam. Sitting in her bed, she heard footsteps approach the door, keys jingling, and a man came at the door. At first, the girl cannot figure who it might be. A few blinks and she finally had a clear view of the culprit. She tried to run towards the door, hoping to free herself, but unfortunately wasn't able to. There was a chain connected from the bed and locked to her leg. It was securely strapped and made it impossible for her escape. But she couldn't find a good reason that could validate the way he's treating her. The man was suggesting that unless Sam changed herself for the man above, she does not deserve to be free. Until then, you'll be my personal pet. The man blurted out those words that nearly drove Sam insane. She was waiting for him to flinch or burst into laughter. but the man was dead serious. He handed Sam clothes to change, which she declined, but that only made things worse for the girl. In his pocket was a remote. The man began to press the red button and brought deep pain in her bones. Sharp spikes were embedded in the metal that was cuffed around the girl's leg, and the longer he pressed, the more it penetrated to her flesh. Blood was streaming from her legs. Crippled in pain and agony, Sam yelled at him and begged him to stop. In the end, she helplessly agreed to wear the clothes. The spikes shrank, and the crashing pain slowly disappeared. The man left Sam in the room, bloody and in pain. She changed into the clothes the man had given her. She was terrified, afraid of the possibility that she might not be able to escape and manage to get out alive. Tears started to stream down her face. Sam never imagined her life to end like this. Fear tormented her. Being trapped in a cage that seemed to be located in an isolated place stabbed fear in her chest. She was in full regret. The girl wished that she didn't saw and entertain the man at the club. A voice from a speaker startled Sam. It was getting late, and the man told her to get some sleep. But it was impossible to tell what time it was. There was no window to see the sunset or rise, nor a clock to instantly tell time. Everything was controlled from the outside, with no switches inside the room. The lights were turned off, and it was pitch dark inside the room. The girl used this as an opportunity to plan her way out. She got up, started knocking on the walls, looking for clues or a vulnerable part to break. The walls had an odd quality to them. They were hollow, rather than solid, as though it were merely a sliver of a wall. Sam devised a strategy. To fulfill her plan, she needed to be patient, gain strength, and stay alive. The next morning, an inaudible voice woke the girl up. She slowly opened her eyes, and the man was beside the bed, praying and holding a rosary in his hands. Sam stared at the man, her eyes not blinking. Baffled and afraid, she hurriedly got up and distanced herself away from Adam. The words were not clear, but it was obvious that he was praying. The girl can't hear much of the prayer, but she can clearly hear her name. Frozen and not able to move, she continued to stare at the man. Wrapping up his morning routine, he slipped the rosary in his pocket and then smiled at the girl. She was treated like an animal, not even close to a pet. She was bathed with a hose and a painful blow of water. She was even fed with leftover food. The girl would be lucky if it's not spoiled or it has no crawling maggots in it. And purposely pressing the remote to hurt the girl just to amuse him, or even splash her with dirty water. Standing there, like a deranged man that is out of his mind, he smiled at the girl for no reason and sat beside her. The man gently grabbed her hair, enough to feel pain, sniffed, and stood up. Before leaving, he pointed at every corner of the wall and said he'd be watching her while he's away. The man left and made sure she was securely locked inside. The girl was still chained to the bed. She must carefully execute her plan, or she loses both her life and foot. Sam began to locate the hollow part of the wall. After a few seconds, she began poking, using the metal hoops from the tank top she wore earlier. The girl successfully ripped through it. For a moment she had hope, but was then replaced with fear. Outside the wall was a metal cage, literally trapping the girl and made it more impossible for her to escape. Then there was a sound coming from outside, like a door being closed. The girl is guessing it was Adam. He came in, and she noticed he was holding a paper bag and a cup. The man approached her with a grin on his face and handed her the food. The girl was hesitant to eat it, but she needed it to replenish her strength. She started eating and finished it quickly. Adam stood there, waiting for the girl to complete her meal. Something was wrong. The man seemed a bit strange at that very moment. He obviously noticed the ripped wall, but didn't say anything about it. He stepped out of the cage and bid the girl goodnight. The next day, Sam woke up with a bright light in her face. This time, it was not the same light she saw every day. The wooden wall was gone. The steel cage was now presenting all its glory, and Adam was standing outside the cage, smiling like a psycho serial killer. The man claimed to witness what Sam had done the other day, so he removed the wall to satisfy the girl and to lessen her effort in ripping the whole thing apart. The girl wandered her eyes around the room. One thing that caught her attention was the wall covered with pictures of various girls. Each photograph had a little object attached to it, dangling like a fish bait. The man saw Sam staring closely at the wall, and he explained that each object came from the girls in the photo. Like a remembrance, a strike of fear hit her. The man seemed proud of his collection and grinned. Her attention was was drawn back to the photographs, since some of them appeared to be rather young. The question in Sam's head was slowly answered. The man killed each and every one of them, and she's the next in line. Fear overpowered her, and she started to panic. She was helpless and clueless as to what could she possibly do to escape. A table draped in a large cloth is placed on the opposite side of the room. The table looked like a table in every usual killer room setup. Laughing hysterically, the man entered the cage, eyes locked on like a magnet towards Sam. His chuckles sounded like a rabid wolf ready to tear apart its prey. Sam stood up and tried to run away, but the chain was grabbed by Adam and pulled Sam back to the ground, claiming as an army from heaven with a mission to convert sinful women. And if not willing to follow, death will be the only solution. The girl cried for help, helplessly hoping that someone would rescue her. Despite the loud plea for help and rescue, the man did not attempt to silence Sam. Instead, he did the exact opposite. Like a lunatic person, the man mocked Sam and imitated her tone. He then stepped out of the cage, walked over the cloth-covered table, and pulled out a large knife. Sam crawled at the corner of the cage, panicked and afraid. The man with a huge knife in his hands stepped back into the cage and began praying. As the girl listened to Adam praying, it sent chills to her spine. The man looked and sounded like he was possessed by a demonic creature. The girl let out a deafening scream. The man stopped, his prayer put into hold, and he was clearly not happy. He slowly turned his back and walked over to the photos on the wall. The man picked a single photo and walked towards the girl. Full of rage and eyes now bloodshot, he grabbed the girl's hair and narrated how he killed each of them. First female, Anna, was imprisoned in a cage and dumped unconscious in a dumpster. The man threw loads of cement and she died before she could even wake up. Next, two young women were tormented and forced to confess their sins and beg for forgiveness in order to be saved. They were both drained of blood and placed in the river, chained to a large rock. Fearful for her life, Sam saw a scissor and grabbed it without the man noticing. Holding it with force and anger, she stabbed him in every part of his body that she could possibly reach. While the man is screaming in agony and pain, she saw the keys hanging and hurriedly grabbed them. But the man was fast and got a chance to grab the girl's arm and twisted it like a branch. The pain was excruciating, but the girl managed to stand up and free herself from being chained. Not a single door is found. The entire room was enclosed with plain white walls. Suddenly, the girl remembered the hidden type door and was disguised as a wall from one of her client's house and thought the door might be hidden somewhere. As the girl started to search for the hidden door, Adam stood up and grabbed the chainsaw from the table. The man ran, laughing like a lunatic and pointing the chainsaw towards Sam. There was a long wire and the girl hurriedly pulled it, causing Adam to trip. Dropping the chainsaw on the floor, he lost his balance and fell into the sharp blades, lacerating his body and crushing his bones. The man was torn into pieces. The girl heard every bone shatter, each blade slicing through his flesh. She stepped away and accidentally hit a button. It revealed an opening. The girl saw a room that looked like a living room. She scrambled out of the bloody place and ran out of the house. It was a secluded place. No neighboring houses can be seen in miles. Relieved to be alive, the girl started to cry. She walked the road and didn't take a glimpse of the house. From that moment, Sam promised to never entertain weird guys anymore, especially religious dudes. Or maybe she would completely stop sleeping with different guys.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.